Hey folks, and welcome back to my tutorial series on how to build a multifunctional object-oriented Discord bot in Python. So last time we got half of our at-a-glance UI elements up and running, which is super exciting. And today I think we're going to take care of the other half. Alright, so let's jump right in. Okay, so let's open up our at-a-glance class, and we're also going to need our at-a-glance UI as well. Underneath our orientation button and above our at-a-glance view, let's go ahead and define our friend code button. And again, I'm just going to use the term for the friend code system in Final Fantasy XIV, but we're going to say mayor button. Okay, this is a profile section button. Let's define our init. We're going to take a reference to the mayor code, which is an optional string. Okay, let's do the super call. Label for this button can be friend ID. Okay, we don't want it disabled, which is false. And the row for this button is going to equal 1. Okay? Let's make sure we call self.setStyle on the mayor code that we've passed in. Alright, let's define our callback. And this is going to be a super basic one, just like most of them. AAG equals self.view.aag. And we want to await AAG.setMayor with the interaction that we spawned. Okay, self.setStyle on AAG._mayor. Interaction. There we go. And then our await edit message helper. Let's pass in the interaction. The embed equals aag.status. And the view equals self.view. Alright, so there's our callback for the button. Okay, so let's jump over to our at-a-glance class right here. And above our update method, we can create the setMayor function. Okay, so this will be an async def setMayor, and we're going to take in the interaction that we spawned with no return. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is spawn a modal, because in this case, we can just spawn our modal directly. There's no select menus that need to be done, no follow-up messages, just a modal. Okay, so we're going to say modal equals mayor input modal. And into this, we're going to say self.mayor, like that. And let's finish out this function before we define the mayor input modal, okay? So await interaction.response, await interaction.response, send modal, and drop in the modal, await modal.wait. Then, if not, modal.complete. We can just return from here. Otherwise, self.mayor, the property, equals modal.value. And we are done with that function. Okay, let's define our mayor input modal. Let's go over here to our UI, and down here all the way at the bottom, let's say class mayor input modal, which is a frog modal. And into our init, we're going to take, of course, a reference to the mayor code, which is an optional string. And then we need to call the superclass, as usual, with our title. And that's going to be friend ID entry. Actually, let's say friend ID code entry. Okay. So let's say self.addItem. This will be our instructions field. So it's an input text. The style is going to be input text style.multiline. The label is going to be instructions. Placeholder is going to be enter your friend ID / pairing code. And our value is going to be enter your alphanumeric friend pairing ID below. Sure, that sounds good. Okay, and as usual, we want this not to be required. Awesome. Okay, let's add another input field. Self.addItem, input text. The style for this one is going to be input text style single line, excuse me. Label is going to be friend ID. Let's make the placeholder, let's make an example of A1, B2, C3, D4, E5. Sure, that's an excellent pairing code. Okay, value is going to be, we can just pass in the current value directly. Oh, naming convention should stay the same. This is current value. We can just put that there. And then we don't want this to be required so that the user can delete it if they want. And the max length for this, let's say 30. Okay. Let's define our callback. Async def callback. Okay, and we're going to say if self.complete or self.children sub1.value self.value equals self.children. Actually, we've processed this differently before, so we're going to say self.value equals self.children sub1.value if self.children sub1.value else none. Okay, that's going to be more consistent with the way that we've been doing it in the past. I apologize. Okay, so under here, let's say self.complete equals true. And we want to await the interaction.response.edit message dummy response and self.stop to close the modal. Okay, very cool. So we should be in business now. Let's go ahead and add our mayor button to the at-a-glance view right here. So we can just say mayor button self.aag._mayor. Okay, cool. And let's also, before we forget, go up here to the very top and let's export our mayor modal, our mayor input modal in under all. Okay, so that should make it go away over here. Very cool. Okay, so let's test. Looking good. Okay. All right, we've got a friend ID button. Our modal pops up correctly. Okay, and the value's updating correctly as well. Very cool. We are in business, and that took us like 10 minutes. Cake, right? Okay, next up is age. Let's jump over into our code and stop the bot for now. And we'll go into our at-a-glance UI. And down here underneath, actually, let's say above our mayor button, I want to copy the mayor button. Okay, and I'm just going to paste that in right above. We're going to change this to age. And we're going to change all of our references to mayor to age. Okay? So we'll say age there, underscore age there. And here we're going to say set age. Okay, cool. That's looking good. Let's fix that, no spaces. There we go. Okay. So now let's define our set age function over here in at a glance. Hopefully you followed. I know that was pretty quick. Let's say above set mayor, async def set age. Okay, actually, let's copy our set mayor function because it's ultimately basically the same thing. Okay, so we're going to change this to set age input modal underscore age here, self.age equals modal.value. Okay, cool. Back to our at-a-glance UI, and all the way down here at the bottom, let's say right above our mayor input modal, let's define our age input modal, which is, of course, a frog modal. All right, so let's define our init. And as usual, we're going to take a reference to the current value, which is an optional string, an optional union of string or integer. And then we need to call the superclass and drop in a title. which in this case is going to be age value input. All right, let's add our instructions field. Input text. Style is input text style.multiline. Label is instructions. Placeholder is going to be enter your age below. And the value is going to be enter your age. It may be a numerical value or text. And as usual, not required, false. So self.addItem, input text. The style is input text style.single line. Label is going to be age. Placeholder is going to be example 32 or older than you think. Just to give an example of both a numerical value and text. Okay, so we want the value of this. We need to handle the fact that there may be an integer here. Okay, so let's just say string current value if current value is not none, else none. Okay, so even if we have a string here, we're just converting the string back to a string. So we can say that. This is not required. And then the max length is going to be, let's say 40. No, let's say 30. Always got to keep our length limits in mind, so less is usually more. Let's define our callback. Okay, so we need to process the value. So the first thing I want to say is if self.children sub1.value. Okay, so if there's a value, we need to check and see if the user entered a digit. Okay, so if self.children sub1.value is digit, then we're going to say self.value, the self.value of the modal equals the absolute value, because the user could have been a smartass and put in a negative value. We don't want that. So it's the absolute value of the integer of self.children sub1.value. Okay, following? Otherwise, self.value can just equal self.children sub1.value directly. Okay, and regardless, we want to say await interaction dot response dot edit message. Oh my goodness. Message and self.stop to close the modal. Cool. So let's make sure we export our age input modal up here. And then let's make sure we add our age button to the at a glance view as well. So I'm going to add it underneath the orientation button. Yeah. So age button self.aag._age. Oops. Open parenthesis. There we go. All right, let's test. I think we're all set. Okay, looking good. Jump back over here. All right, and let's put a numerical value. All right, looks like it's not updating the status message, so let's jump back over here. Okay, I paused the video and located the issue. Here we are in our age input modal, and we forgot to say self.complete equals true after we assign the value. All right, so when we were in our setAge function, get rid of these print statements. Oops, get rid of these print statements. In our setAge function, we were checking to see if the modal was complete, and if it was not complete, we returned before we set the value. Okay, so let's rerun and give this a shot. Okay, at a glance. All right, let's enter our age. Okay, we didn't get an update. Looks like we have an error. Okay, let's see here. Oh, here's our issue. In the age property, we've checked to see if the age is a digit, but if we store it as an integer, there's no way to check if it's a digit because we know it's a digit. So here, instead of elif self.age.isDigit, I want to say elif isInstance self.age integer. Okay, like that. And that will solve our error there. So let's stop and rerun. Okay, let's try. Third time's a charm, right, folks? Looks like our age was saved successfully, so let's change this to a text value. And as you can see, since it was a text value, it's been put into a code snippet to indicate that this is a custom value that the user entered. Cool. It looks like we're not getting the words that say custom value under here, though, so we'll address that in some refactoring later on. But for the time being, I want to focus on the last attribute that we need to take care of, and that is our height, okay? So let's jump back over into the code. And then let's start where we have each time up till now. We'll go to our at-a-glance UI, and then up here toward the top, let's say right above our age button, we're going to say class height button, which is a profile section button like that. And within the init, as we usually do, we're going to take a reference to the value in the class. So the height is an optional integer, right? Okay. So, we need to call our superclass. And then into this we can pass in our label, which is height. Disabled is false. There we go. And we'll set this in row 1. Okay? Make sure we call self.setStyle on the height value. And then within our callback, it'll be the same behavior as we usually have. So AAG equals self.view.aag, await aag.setHeight, and we'll pass in the interaction. Self.setStyle again with aag._height, and then await edit message helper with the interaction being the interaction we generated. The embed equals aag.status, and view equals self.view. Okay. So we're cruising along now. All right, so let's define our setHeight function in the at-a-glance class. Okay, so let's go down here above our age again, and we will say async def set height with us taking in an interaction. And not having a return. Okay, so let's generate our modal, which is a HeightInputModal. And then we pass in the height value. And then we can just take the logic from setAge, in fact, and we can paste it right here in setHeight. And then let's just change self.age to self.height. Okay, cool. So let's define our HeightInputModal. Let's go back over to our at-a-glance UI, and we'll cruise down here to the bottom. Once again, above our age input modal, we'll say class HeightInputModal, which, of course, is a frog modal. And within our init, we're going to take a reference to the current value, which is an optional integer. And then we need to call the superclass and pass in a title, which for this is just going to be height entry. And then let's go ahead and add our instructions field. So self.addItem, input text. The style is going to be input text style dot multiline. The label is instructions. Our placeholder is going to be enter your height in feet and inches. Okay, but for the value, we're also going to have an additional behavior for this, and we're going to say enter your height in feet and inches or centimeters. So we want to make this accessible to foreign folks as well, in case our bot blows up and gets really popular, right? So we want to support standard and metric, okay? And this, of course, is not going to be required, so false. Okay, let's add another item, which will be an input text. The style is going to be input text style dot single line. The label is going to be height, excuse me. And for our placeholder, I want to put, for example, 6 foot 2 inches, like that. You can even put a space in between. We'll be dealing with those. Okay, our value is going to be the current value, which we can't necessarily pass in, but let's just put this here as a placeholder, and we'll parse that value in a second. We don't want to require this, so they can null out the value if they want. And for the max length, let's say 15 characters. Let's say 20, just to be safe. Now, before we define our callback, let's deal with the current value, okay? Because we may have an integer here, but we want to parse that into this format. So many feet and so many inches, okay? So we're going to do that right here between the add item calls. And first off, if current value is none, we can pass that into the input text, right? So that'll work. So the only thing that we need to change is if current value is not none. So in that case, we need to parse the data. So let's start by getting the amount of inches that we're dealing with here, because we're storing our value in centimeters. So inches equals integer converter of the current value divided by 2.54, which is going to give us the number of inches. And the number of feet is going to be an integer converter of inches divided by 12. Okay, so this is going to lop off any extra values, any decimal points, and it's going to round it down. Okay, so how do we get the leftover number of inches? Well, we can just say leftover equals integer value of inches modulo 12, like that. So this is going to give us what remained from the feet conversion here. Okay, and then we're going to just reassign the current value to an F string of feet with an apostrophe after it, and then leftover with an escaped double quote after it. Okay, because we're going to be able to parse a number of different ways of saying feet and inches or centimeters. Okay. Okay, so let's define our callback. Async def callback, and then in here, first thing we want to check is if the user put anything into this text input, okay? Because they may have nullified it, so we may have a none value. So in that case, we want to say if self.children sub1.value, so if there's a value in that input text, we're going to do some RegEx, okay? So we're going to do a regular expression to search through the text that the user entered, okay? So result equals re.match. And I'm going to drop in a regular expression string, and I'll do my best to explain what we're doing, but I am by no means a RegEx expert. In fact, I got some help from a friend on this, so hopefully it's right. If you have any comments on how to make it better or how to make it more succinct, please feel free to leave them in the video. Otherwise, here's what we're going to do. So we're going to put a regular expression string, which is double quotes preceded by an R, a lowercase r, and we want to put an up caret. So this indicates that we're going to start at the beginning of the line, okay? So in here, we're going to put parentheses and then /d+, okay? So the parentheses indicate that this is going to be an extraction group, and we're going to extract any amount of digits. Okay, so /d stands for any digit, and the plus stands for one or more. Okay, so we're looking for the beginning of the line and one or more digits. Okay, and then we want to follow that by a /s and an apostrophe. And what that indicates is 0 or more spaces or white spaces. And then cm for centimeters. Okay, and then we want to end that with /period ? Okay, so that indicates that there might be a period after the centimeters, or there might not, but no more than one. Okay, so now I'm going to drop in a vertical pipe separator, and this is an OR bar. Okay, so we're going to check for centimeters or whatever we put in after this. And now we want to check for feet and inches, right? So we need to do separate checks for feet alone and inches alone, and then we need to do a check for them together. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's start with feet, okay? So we need to extract, so parentheses, /d plus. So we're extracting all of the digits that come before a /s apostrophe, outside the parentheses, /s apostrophe, so any amount of white space. And then we're going to make some parentheses here, and we'll create a matching group, okay? So $:, indicates that it needs to be one of, but only one of the items in this group. Okay, so we're going to put FT and /period with a question mark to indicate that there might be a period after the abbreviation. Let's put an OR separator, and then we'll put the word feet in case the user types in the full word, and then we'll put an OR separator and a single quote. Okay, because you can indicate feet and inches with single quotes and double quotes, right? Okay, and then outside of that group, let's put another OR bar, and we're going to do the same behavior but with inches. Okay, so let's make our parentheses, /d plus for digits, not /s, /d. And then outside the parentheses, let's put /s apostrophe, and then we'll go open parentheses, question mark, colon, and then we're going to start with the abbreviation, so IN, and then /period, question mark. Let's put an OR bar, and then inches in case some maniac types in the full word inches. Let's put a / and then a double quote, and then let's also put an OR bar and 2 single quotes in case the user did it that way. Okay, now outside of those parentheses, let's put another OR bar, and we'll drop down because this is getting kind of long. And now what we need to do is search for a combination of feet and inches at the same time. Okay, so we can actually do this by copying the feet and inches behavior that we did up here, dropping it in, and replacing this bar in the middle, in between the two, with /s apostrophe. So for any number of spaces between the feet and inches measurement, okay? So hopefully that made sense. If you have questions, you feel free to ask them in the comments. I may be able to answer them, I may not, but for now, let's keep going. Okay, so below this we need to pass, the value that we're searching with this string, okay? And so that's going to be self.children sub1.value. Okay, so this is our regex. Let's drop down here and say if result, because if this match turns up absolutely nothing in here, we're just going to get back a single none value, okay? So if result, if it's not none, let's check the first group. Let's check for centimeters here. So if result dot group 1, because result groups are 1 indexed, not 0. Keep that in mind. If it's centimeters, we can just directly set the value. So self.value equals the integer, because this returns a string, the integer of result.group 1. Okay, cool, that was easy. All the rest are going to be this easy, right? More or less. So let's say elif result.group 2. Okay, so what's group 2? Group 2 is just feet. So if it's a round number of feet, So let's convert to centimeters first. So centimeters equals an integer of result.group2. And then outside the integer converter, let's say times 12 to make it inches because we have feet. Let's make it inches. And then let's multiply by 2.54 to get centimeters. Okay, but this may be a float value. This may have a decimal point, and so we don't want that. So let's say self.value equals math.ceiling centimeters. So we're going to round up, give the user the benefit of the doubt, a few extra millimeters on their height. Can't hurt, right? Okay, let's address the third group. Only inches. Okay, so if someone measured like 92 inches, we need to handle that. So let's say elif result.group3. And let's do the same thing. Let's convert to centimeters first. So centimeters equals int result.group3. And then out here, we just need to multiply by 2.54 because we already have the inches. And let's say again, self.value equals math.ceiling centimeters. Okay, that was easy. Now let's handle the final group. Okay, so elif result.group4, and in here we have two capture groups, okay, because we're capturing the feet and we're capturing the inches, okay? So elif result.group4 and result.group5, which means that both of these are present. We can convert to inches first. So let's say integer of result.group4 times 12. And then we're going to add the integer value of result.group5, which is the inches value. Okay, and now let's say self.value equals math.ceiling inches times 2.54. And we can pass it in that way. Okay, very cool. So this is the behavior that we want, but in the result that a value was in the child, but a result was not found. So else down here, we want to create an error. And this error is going to be called a height input error. Input error. And into the error, we're going to pass the problematic value, okay, which is self.children sub1.value. And then we're going to display that value within the error message so the user knows what they put in. Okay, and we can just await interaction .response .send message, and the embed is going to be equal to the error message, and we'll make this ephemeral as well, just to hide the error from any prying eyes. Okay, now remember, we've only properly responded to this interaction here in the event of an error. Okay, so whether or not we find a match, unless there's an error, we haven't responded. So let's come back outside of our outer if block, and let's do a try. Await interaction .response .edit message. Like that. Okay, and in the event that doesn't work, we're just going to pass. Okay, because the only time that wouldn't work is when we've already responded. Okay, easy. Now down here, we just need to say self.complete equals true and self.stop to close the modal. All right, so this is our callback. Okay, so before we forget, let's go up to the top and let's export our HeightInputModal in Dunder All. And let's also go down to our at-a-glance view right here, and let's say under the orientation button, we're going to add a height button and pass in the height. Okay, very cool. So now let's define our error message here. So the height input error. So we'll go into our errors file under utilities, and down here at the bottom, let's define it. So class height input error, and this is going to be an error message. Oh my, just like that. And what I want to do is I actually want to paste in this doc string that I wrote, because it's going to make it easier to identify how our error message is constructed. So for instance, where the input gets dropped in so that we know how to format the input. Okay, because if you call height input error and instantiate it, you can mouse over and the docstring will appear, giving us the information about the error message and how it's constructed. Okay, so that's why we're doing that. But let's define our init, and then into here we're going to take the entry that was put into the modal, which is going to be a string. Okay, and then within our init, let's call the superclass. And into this we can go ahead and pass the title, which is going to be invalid height input. Let's pass in the message, which is going to be an F string, and it'll be the value between ticks entry couldn't be interpreted. Okay. And then let's pass the solution, which we'll have as parentheses. The following are acceptable input styles. Okay, and then we'll put a new line and drop down. And then we'll put a hyphen, and in between tick marks, we'll say X feet, X inches, and a new line, and we'll drop down. Same format, hyphen and a couple of tick marks, XFT, XIN with new line. We'll do X feet between ticks. Actually, X feet is probably implicit in the one above. Let's say X inches like that, and then we'll also say X centimeters like that. Okay, so that is our error message. Let's go up to all and make sure that we export it. So height input error. And then let's go back to our UI and make sure that the squiggly went away. Okay, so I believe that should be everything. Let's go ahead and test and see how it works. Okay, let's jump over to Discord. Okay, so our button has appeared, that's good. And we're getting a modal, also good. Okay, so the first behavior we want to test is centimeters, right? So let's say 192 centimeters. Okay, so it appears that we have an error. And it looks like it's in the at-a-glance class. Aha. Okay, so in our height property, we've got the same issue that we had down here in the age, where we can't check a digit for being isDigit because it's just implicitly a digit and doesn't have that method attached to it. So instead we want to say elif isInstance self.height int, like that. Okay, so that's a mistake that I made. I apologize for that. We should be good to go now, however. Okay. And as you can see, it did save last time. We just weren't able to update the message because it tried to call the height property when creating our our status message. Okay, so let's check one more time. Let's say 160 centimeters. Okay, there we go. So the conversion worked. So let's check our value in feet. So how about 5 feet? All right, looking good. How about just inches? So 92 inches. Okay, very good. And finally, let's do a combination of feet and inches. So how about 6 foot 2 inches? And we'll use an apostrophe and double quotes there. Okay, so it looks like we didn't pick up the 2 inches. So let me pause the video and see what the deal is. Okay, so I'm back here in the code and I've located the issue. It's in our at-a-glance UI script in the height input modal, and it's in the regular expression, as you might have guessed. Okay, so here within the initial check for only feet, after this match group here, we need to put a $sign right before the pipe separator. Okay, so after the entire statement for feet only, we need to put a $sign indicating that that is the end of the line. Okay, otherwise, when we put feet and inches, this is going to pick up the feet and it's going to discard everything else, including the inches. and we don't want that, obviously. So let's run again. Alrighty, and let's say 5 feet 10 inches. And there we go. Okay, success. So our at-a-glance section is now working, updating, and fully functional. So I'm going to stop the video here then, and in our next video we're going to look at images. Hooray, that's going to be really exciting. Finally some color and some pictures. So I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.